Brooke Woodard, welcome to the Soccer Queens podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on.
You have been someone I've been trying to chase down to get on the show for many reasons. First, you played at my alma mater, Johns Hopkins University. You also just recently won the Division III national championship. So major congrats. The final game was just so exciting to watch. And we're gonna get into all that today. And now you're still continuing your career, which we'll also talk about. So let's just kick things off with where did you play in college before Hopkins? And then what professional club are you with now?
So I started at the University of South Carolina for my freshman year, and I had a great experience there. I loved it. We went to the Final Four. We won the SEC championship. It was a perfect dream start to my college soccer career. And from there, I ended up transferring to the University of Pennsylvania just for purely academic reasons. And I just really wanted to be in the Ivy League. I had been talking to the coach beforehand. What had happened was I actually didn't, so I was committed to Penn throughout high school. As you may know, it's pretty hard to get into an Ivy League school, so I didn't get in coming from high school. So I ended up going to South Carolina, building up my academic resume and my soccer resume as well, trying to get into Penn. And that's what I did. I ended up getting in my sophomore year, and I completed all three of my other years in my undergraduate degree there. But with COVID, I had another year for soccer to play, and I decided to go stick with the high level academic school. Chose Johns Hopkins for that. They had an amazing cognitive neuroscience program, which is what I got my master's in. And yeah, that's where I did my last year. The rest is history. National champions. Couldn't be happier with how that year went.
How many championships or conference titles have you won?
In college, I've won one conference championship. I won one in the Ivy League as well. And then, one at Hopkins. So that'll be three.
Wow, that is incredible. And you're playing professionally now, and congratulations. And you're doing amazing. Where are you currently at?
Yeah. So I am currently in Reykjavik, Iceland, playing at a club called From. I'm not going to try to pronounce the first half of that, but it's in Icelandic, and it's a really long word, but it stands for football club From, basically.
That is so cool. And I'm excited to hear about your journey to getting signed. But let's kind of backtrack a little bit. I want to talk about your childhood and your youth soccer journey and when you started to develop a love for the game. So just take me back. When did this all start?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's something I love to talk about because it's so special to me. I started playing soccer at age 5, just rec league. Everybody with all the little kids with the big jerseys that go down to their knees. That's where I started playing, and I loved it. And I was a super super shy kid. To the point where my teachers thought there was something wrong with me. They literally brought in school specialists and were just kind of asking questions are you okay, things like that. I was just really really shy. That's just how I was. But when I started playing soccer, I started developing this self-confidence, this passion, this why, and that's sort of what carried me, what developed that love for the game, and what kind of carried me to where I am now. Just finding myself, I started making friends, branching out, having this swag to me. And I really credit that all to playing soccer and just realizing that, hey, I'm actually really good at this thing. And I actually really enjoy doing it. So that's sort of how my love for soccer started, just really, really at a young age, just finding myself through soccer.
So you started on a rec team. Now, how long did you stay in the rec system until you got serious and said, "Hey, it's time for me to play travel and to go to showcases and get seen"? What age did that kind of transition?
So I remember being really young, probably 10 years old, 11 years old, telling my dad, like, I want to be a professional soccer player. Like, I recognize that this is something that is really special to me, something that I'm good at, something that I would love to just continue doing. And he was like, all right, kid, like, you got to know what comes with that statement, like a lot of commitment, a lot of sacrifice. And so I was really committed to doing that. And so from rec, I kind of started playing club at a local club in Vermont, where I'm from. And it was okay for the time being. Like I was able to develop and get better. There was a ceiling though to one of those clubs that I played at, and I just couldn't find myself like improving. I was actually on the B team on that club, and I just couldn't really improve with the like squad that I was with, the coach that I was. I just wasn't really getting better. My dad recognized that, my mom recognized that, and they decided to actually create a club for me and some of the other girls who felt the same in our community. And so they created a club. We started playing, and we brought in a coach from St. Lucia. His name is Trevor, and he's like a second father to me in a lot of ways. He really helped me develop the tiki taka style of play and helps my team develop that tiki taka style. Like in Vermont, nobody was expecting to see tiki taka Barcelona style soccer in Vermont, and that's sort of what we did. And so from there, we really started to develop as a team. And me as an individual, I also really was like, okay, I'm getting very serious. I think I can play at a higher level. My dad recognized that too. And just in the area, there wasn't a lot of high level soccer. Like we had to create something in order to play that high level soccer. So my parents ended up committing to driving me to basically Boston every other day for training. And I played in the ECNL for the FC Stars. And that's really where I started to learn about college soccer, the whole process. I'm first gen college student, first gen student athlete. So soccer was also sort of what opened up that door for me for college and just kind of taught me how to pursue that route. And so that's sort of the club route that I took. I started playing in the ECNL, traveling all over the country to as many college showcases and ID camps that I could until I landed at both Penn and South Carolina.
That's such an interesting journey, but I hear that often with a lot of current professional female soccer players is they were on rec teams initially all through childhood, and then in middle school on the cusp of high school was when they sort of realized, okay, I'm going to get serious about this. And they didn't fall behind by staying in the rec system for a while, and they were still able to get seen. And like you said, you started to get into the ECNL and get into those showcases a little bit later on than what most young kids are doing nowadays. Now, I'm curious, you mentioned your dad a lot. I'm sure he's just played a really big role. Did you like play with him in the backyard? Did he like really coach you? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, so like I said, when we started the soccer club, my both my parents did. My dad really took a head coaching position. My mom was administration. She was organizing, pulling girls, making sure we have at least 11 on a roster every single game. So my mom's gonna kill me for just mentioning my dad, but yeah, he was my coach. So that's why I say like my dad a lot. He was pretty much like there coaching on the front lines with me. My mom was always there on the back, making sure everything was even possible. But yeah, my dad always made sure to push me. He knew a little bit more about the game of soccer, so he was a little bit more proactive in like the actual coaching. So he was the head coach along with Trevor Daniels, who I mentioned, who is the St. Lucian coach. He was my coach all growing up. He basically, I was doing double, triple sessions as a middle schooler. he was the coach for the boys team and other levels of the girls team. So I think like we had an 18 team, 16 team, 14 team, and I would just practice with all of those girls and he would coach all of those girls. So our days were pretty much, I would go to school, he would go to work, we would both head to training, as well as my younger sister, and we would just hit 3-4 trainings in a row, and that and we'd go home for the night. So he was, oh, and that was pretty consistent for a lot of my middle school career. So he was really a big part in my actual soccer development. I think probably the biggest part.
Did you play any other sports or have other hobbies? You seem like a very active, really into fitness. Anything else in your childhood?
Yeah, I played everything. I mean, like, especially at the rec league, really young ages, I think it's just really important in general to just focus on being an athlete and enjoying sport in general. So that's what I did. I played lacrosse, softball. I played, what else? I'm into CrossFit. I did do a little bit of CrossFit. I did gymnastics. I just did everything that I could. And oh, I did basketball. I did AAU basketball too. I actually really loved basketball, and that's interesting because it came down to sort of into middle school when I was telling my dad that I was really interested in playing professional soccer. He was like, "Okay, well, it's not in your best interest to take off a whole season, meaning the winter, to play basketball. So I think it's sort of coming to a point where you should decide what you should seriously commit to, because you can be using that time to train soccer and develop and get better over here in Boston. Or you can just play basketball. It just depends on how serious you want to be with this. So I was sort of faced with that choice, and I ended up obviously choosing soccer and just kind of focusing strictly on soccer around middle school. I think was my last season. Like entering high school, I didn't play um, high school basketball at all. So middle school was my last season of basketball. That's sort of when I decided to just like just focus on soccer. Don't focus on any other sports and any other seasons. And I saw a lot of progress. I saw a lot of benefits to that. It was a sacrifice in that, like, I saw my other friends, my old basketball friends, my old team playing, and that was hard. But I think when you know what you want and like you can't really, deny yourself of that dream, it's just something that you have to do. So it was, but all growing up, yeah, it was all the sports possible. And then now I'm sort of, I mean, I'm really into weightlifting, weight training. Sort of a newfound love over the course of the pandemic is really when I started doing this research, because I wasn't training with a strength coach anymore. I think that's the benefit of, one of the luxuries of being a college athlete is you have a strength training coach specifically for you, does all your workouts. You don't really have to know anything. You just go in, do the workout that they program you, and get out. But when I didn't really have access to that, I had to learn sort of like how to build a workout, what workouts to build, what's the right form. Like I didn't have a coach to say, hey, like do this with your hips, or push your knees out or something like that, give me helpful cues for lifts. So it was really like, okay, I need to learn how to do this properly. I can also use this time to really develop my strength, because that was something that was a weakness of mine. So I did do that. I started doing a lot of personal training research, and I actually took personal training courses and everything. So, and I also do personal training for people online. So I am also really into that in CrossFit. I found a love in CrossFit. I think it's really cool. It's obviously difficult to balance with soccer because they're both very demanding sports, but I love to just do a Metcon or a type of WOD of the day when I'm training. So those are my two things that I focus on right now, outside of soccer: strength training, CrossFit.
I love to hear that. And we really hammer home on this podcast the importance of strength training for girls soccer players. Did you weight train in high school too?
So my weight training in high school looked a lot different. It was a lot lighter loads, a lot less frequent, and I do regret that. I just don't think I had the knowledge, and it wasn't a fault of anyone else's but mine. I knew what I was supposed to be doing, I knew the importance of it, but it didn't really like solidify in my brain how much I would change. Like it's hard, like hindsight is 2020. So like looking back, I'm like, if I did this in high school, I would be like so much more ahead of like everybody else. But obviously in high school, I'm like, it's fine. Like I'm doing well. Like I don't need to do anything else. So it was just looking back, I think it'd be a really key thing to make it a little bit more consistent and a little bit more intense. I was a pretty casual weight trainer. I did a lot of body weight stuff, a few things with weights like leg press and hamstring curls, but like the fact that I'm able to like specify exactly what workouts I did, like two main functional workouts, is tells you that I didn't really do a lot. Um,
Right.
so so yeah, I definitely wish that I did more weight training as a high schooler.
I see that a lot too. A lot of high school girls, they don't load as much as they should. But the good thing is it's at least a good start. It's better than nothing and it gets girls comfortable with the gym, but people do need to realize that performance enhancement and injury reduction is more than just body weight and mini bands and balance drills.
Yeah.
And that loading is so key for that muscular strength and power. And I actually know your strength coach at Johns Hopkins, Amari, and
Yeah.
he's fantastic. And I actually had Coach Dan and Greg on the podcast a few months back, and I told them one thing that stood out about your team this season and you as well was the athleticism. And you guys were just blowing by teams, and you just looked faster and you could sustain those high speeds even in the second half, and you just never back down. So kind of talk about how you guys maintain your fitness in the season and what were some of the important things that you focused on.
So I think fitness for the season starts in preseason and probably a little bit before. You have to come into season with a level of fitness because that's just going to help you continue to progress and, like you said, prevent injuries. I think there was like a statistic that's like I can't remember the exact fitness measure that they used, but it was something along the lines of like if you have a higher overall fitness level on your team, you have a significant amount of injury reduction in the season. So when I learned that, I was sort of like, all right, time to get into shape, time to be serious. So we trained for the beep test all preseason. Dan actually didn't end up testing us on the beep tests, which some of us were expecting would happen. We were always like, wait, is it going to happen? Are we going to do this thing? Like,
I
so
actually
we,
love that. Like,
yeah,
because then you can actually focus on team tactics, but like
exactly.
everyone still comes in ready.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
amazing.
It was,
Go
it was genius.
Dan.
Yeah, it was genius, 100%.
Yeah.
So we were all trained for it. We were all kind of had that anxiety about it, like, oh my God, we have this fitness test. Like, is it going to happen? And then when he said, no, we're not going to do the fitness test, we have a lot of other things to focus on, it was like, oh my God, like everybody was so relieved. But like you said, we were all in shape, we were all fit and ready to go. So I think that was a huge part of it. And then in the season, we had a few, I think like one day a week of probably 30 minutes of conditioning. But I loved again how Dan and Greg did the conditioning. It was fun. It wasn't like just sprints up and down like 120-yard sprints. Like it was like fun games. Like maybe they'll have like a zigzagging cones, and then you'll have to get through and somebody's chasing you through those cones, or you're in teams and you have to go around this cone and like put a cone on this stake in the ground. Just they made like fun games like that. And I like, so while you're being competitive, you're having fun, you're also like, holy crap, I'm exhausted from this cardio. Like this is really good stuff. So I also loved how they did that. And so we probably did that once a week. As the season like got further in, we had, especially in playoffs, we had less load because D3 playoffs are a little bit different from D1. It's kind of like we had like a back-to-back Sweet 16 to Elite 8 game. And I had never, was it Sweet 16 to Elite 8? Yeah, it was. So we had back-to-back games, literally one day and the next. just games, which is really hard to do as an athlete, especially when our Sweet 16 game was a double overtime game. And then we had to turn around and play, the number one seed in the nation the next day. That's really hard. So, like, during that time, it was all about maintenance. We focused less on conditioning for the group who was playing a lot. And then the group who wasn't, we have to keep them up to that level because when they come on, like in those minutes where the people who are contributing more minutes in the last game can't really do so in the next game, like the people who are coming off the bench are so critical to being in shape. And if they come in and they're in shape and they're fit and they're healthy and they're strong, it just makes the world a difference. And doesn't let the level drop. It actually can raise the level. So for them, it was more fitness, more training based, and then for people who are playing a little bit more minutes, it was sort of just like maintaining during the playoffs.
That's what I love about Coach Dan and Greg is they do a really good job of periodizing the practice sessions and just making sure you guys are going in fresh but still in that maintenance mode. Did you see Amari for like one time a week strength or like mobility and recovery workouts during the season in the weight room?
Yeah, so we actually had lifts the day after a game, which at first I hated. I was like, why are we doing this? I am exhausted. I can't get myself into the gym. But when after you do the workout, and it's not like a intense high like hit type of workout. It's just like strength movements, pretty much. And so after the workout, you just feel like you've totally recovered. And
Right.
so that was like another part of Amari's training that I loved. Day after the game, coming into the gym, getting in a strength session. Obviously, you're not like anywhere close to your max lifts in this type of workout, but like just moving the body, getting the blood flowing through the muscles, repairing all the micro tears that you made in the game. Was like I was like, wow, I need to do this after every game. And that's something that I do here actually as a professional in Iceland. Is I always lift the day after games now just because of Amari's training. And also Amari, we lift with him, I think it's hard to remember the schedule because now I have a whole new schedule that I've like ingrained into my brain. I'm pretty sure we lifted at least one other time. So like day after a game, and then one other time throughout the week. Pretty sure, maybe twice. But yeah, 1 to
I
3 times.
I really like that because I'm sure initially, like lifting the day after a game is like, oh my gosh, we're going to be so sore when really it's better for you than just like plopping on a couch and not getting the blood flowing and not doing that active recovery. And Omari's smart enough to program the appropriate sets and reps so you guys feel
Yes.
great. And it's also nice because you do that lift far out from your next intense practice session and game. So
Right.
that's what you should feel fresh for. So that makes a lot of sense. And I see more strength coaches moving toward that model. So I really like to hear that. Now, as far as your professional career, let's talk about how you got signed. What was that process? I'm sure it's not easy, but let's hear more about it.
Yeah, so it was not easy. I sort of initially approached the process as I did for college recruiting, because that was really the only way that I knew how to approach this type of situation. I initially started sending like emails with my highlight tape from the Hopkins season, and I created like a soccer resume, and I was just kind of talking to current players who are professionals that I had played with. I've been lucky enough to play with like some amazing soccer players who have gone on to play professionally. So I was able to just, connect with them on Instagram or text message and or calling or something like that. Um, I was just kind of like getting the lay of the land. Like, how does this process work? Just asking as many questions as I could think of and listening to all the insight that they had. And then I quickly found out that it was just not the vibe to be sending professional coaches emails and film. Like it's not the same for college because that's what I did in college. I even called people up and spoke to the coach. It's just not how it works. They sort of work like you have to know somebody who knows the coach. So that's what agents are really good for. And so I ended up shopping around for an agency and signed with a really good agency. I work with Mad Sports Management, and they were able to sort of, even before I signed with them, look around for teams who were interested in me sending my film, pretty much do what I was doing, but with like a front person. I think it looks a little bit more professional. It looks a little bit more put together, and it's sort of like a uh, a clearer way. So there's not all this like just any girl can't just send in film to these coaches. It has to be someone who's represented by a credible person who brings you to the attention of these managers or coaches. So that's sort of the process. I think it's almost, I would say, required to have an agent at this level for your first year at least, maybe after you've developed a really awesome resume and your resume can speak for itself. But I think an agent was critical for me to kind of get. They got me a lot of different kind of conversations started with different teams, and they continue to do that. So it's it's been really good working with them, and I would say it's definitely different from the college process. It's a little bit more like standoffish. Like I'm kind of like, in the college process, you have a grasp on what you're doing. You're like, everything's in your control. But this process is a little bit different. It's sort of like your agent's doing the talking for you. They obviously have your best interest, but it just feels a little different.
What's it like playing in Iceland? How's the soccer different?
The soccer, for I'll just start off by saying the culture of Iceland is amazing in terms of like the soccer culture. Like everybody here like loves soccer and supports soccer. I'd say the two main sports in Iceland are soccer and handball. And so like all the kids play soccer, everybody comes to the soccer games. It's much more like a soccer community than the US, which is like so good to see, so good to be a part of. I also do some coaching for the club. So I coach like young girls, and they are like my biggest supporters, biggest fans. They come to the games, and really all of the kids like love to support their team. So in Iceland, how it works is sort of the teams are connected to a a neighborhood in which all the kids who go to that school in the neighborhood play for the club in that neighborhood. So it's a little bit different from the US, I would say. Like you have some outside travelers who come like 20 minutes for practice or who come 40 minutes for practice or something, but here it's like you go to your school, which is your club, and you just kind of are raised through that club. And so you're basically like a die-hard fan by the time you're a teenager. So like uh at least like the men's games I'm thinking of, like all the little boys that I see come to the game are like die-hard fans. And it's really awesome to see. And then you have like older men who are from players and who are still coming back to the games. So it's a really good community in terms of just the soccer, everybody coming together is really getting behind their team, which is something I guess like I hadn't experienced in the US. And then in terms of just the play, it's a pretty high level. Here in Iceland, I'm actually in the second division, so there's a league above me. And so that league is obviously a bit more competitive, and I'm hoping to get into that league next year. Just kind of the progression it goes when you're coming from college, you don't have a professional background, you get 1 year of experience, and then you try to head to like a more competitive higher level team if possible. So but as far as this league, it's pretty competitive. We have a lot of girls from the US who are also really high level US players. Actually, one of my former teammates, Emily Sands, we played at the University of Pennsylvania together. She's playing at a team just down the road from us. So we get to play against each other. But, we have really high level US players coming from all over the place. Iceland professional teams like to have Americans come on the team just because I think the US does such a good job of making, like, college soccer does such a good job of making professional ready players. Like, you get to your pro season, you already know what it's like to be a pro, just because college soccer does a really good job at preparing you in terms of the time commitment, scheduling, the discipline that you need to kind of have all of that stuff together, and just the style of play. So it's pretty competitive here. It's also a very aggressive league. I think one game I actually had 4 yellow cards, like, fouled on me, like, like 4 different players on their team got yellow cards just from fouling me so much in a game. So it's a really, really physical league.
So I love that you said you have dreams of playing in the top division. What are you continuing to do to just raise the ceiling on your game? I mean, we've talked a lot about your training, but is there anything else you're doing to get an edge, like nutrition or advanced recovery methods? What are you focusing on to get there?
Yeah, I'm doing all the above. Mental training, sleep, other recovery tools, and nutrition are the things that I'm really trying to get an edge on outside of my training. I actually My boyfriend and I have developed an app that we sort of, we saw some, like, some holes in some current fitness apps that track your recovery. Actually, they track like one specific thing. So you'll have like one app that tracks recovery, one app that tracks your sleep, one app that tracks your strength, and one that tracks your nutrition, like MyFitnessPal. But there wasn't something that would connect the dots between them. Like, you just have this arbitrary, almost arbitrary information that's like, okay, I have a 60% recovery score. What does that mean for how I eat and how I train throughout the day? And what does that mean for my sleep the next day? So that's sort of the hole that we saw. And so we created like a fully integrated fitness app, that we're actually launching the beta to in a couple days here, where it takes all that information and puts it together. So your sleep will impact your training. If you had a really crappy sleep, maybe you had a 30% sleep, your training, your strength scores, or your load for the day will go down by X percent. So it just kind of accommodates to who you are, how you're training, and then like your nutrition would change based on that. So you're eating a little bit differently on a lighter load day because you had a worse recovery, whatever the circumstance is, it will all change, and it will tell you how to change. And it's all science backed, science based models that will help you sort of recover. So I've been using that app literally as like the holy grail for all my recovery, all my sleep, all my nutrition. I log all my foods. It gives you a nutrition score based on like what type of foods you're eating, the macros that you're hitting, what time you're even eating the food. So I basically use that as like my all one coach outside of training. So I use that. And as far as mental training, I'm a really big mental training focused person. I obviously did my undergraduate in psychology and got my master's in neuroscience. So I'm like very interested in the brain. I know the power of the brain. And so I use that to my advantage. In soccer, I like to do a lot of visualization, a lot of meditation. What I've learned is that when you are in a deep meditative state, you actually have brain waves that are conducive to memory consolidation. And that's sort of the type of brainwaves that we see in deep sleep. So when you're in deep sleep, when you're in this deep meditative state, you have certain brainwaves that are conducive to one of the biggest things, like I said, memory consolidation, and that includes muscle memory. So I like to be in a deep meditative state, and then a few minutes later, start to visualize, start to see myself on the field. And this is actually a tool that I used at the national championship for Hopkins. And I saw myself, let's just say, for example, at the national championship, I saw myself scoring the goal, not the same exact goal, but scoring a goal, obviously. And I just felt the sensation of scoring. I felt the emotional and physical sensations that would happen for scoring, as well as the celebrating, as well as just winning. Like the feeling of winning, I was seeing over and over in my brain. And that sort of creates like a strong mental preparation for the game. So, when we're at the national championship, we're in the locker room getting ready for the game. Everybody's emotions are so high. But for me, I was able to be very calm, very collective because part of me knew that we were going to win the game, and not in a cocky sense, not in a overconfident sense, but just in a sense like, we've got this. I've seen it happen. I know what I need to do. There's nothing else to be done but to do it. And I think that is like a huge part of just the training, the mental training that you need. A lot of high level coaches say your mental game will separate like the good from the great. So if you're mentally prepared, you're going to be very much more prepared when you're in the match and feeling all those feelings when the match really matters.
That's brilliant. And I think that mindset is so huge, and being able to have that calm confidence in
Mhm.
yourself. And a lot of that does also come from preparing the things that you just mentioned, having your sleep dialed in, being prepared with your nutrition, giving your body foods that are nutrient dense and that are energy. And I think it's so important that all the girls listening hear this from you, because you are at one of the highest levels. And what it takes to be a high performer is being diligent with all the factors of performance. I would love everyone to just follow up with you and maybe message you if they have any questions. Where are you on social media?
I am pretty active on Instagram. Yeah, go ahead and follow me on Instagram. I'm sure I'm going to be tagged in your videos. So I'm like, part of my mission is to like help girls understand that they can achieve things. That was one of the biggest barriers that I had to overcome. Being a first gen college student, being a first gen student athlete is like, I didn't have access to this information. I didn't know. And so you hear me a lot of times saying, like, I wish I knew this, I wish I did this. I'm really happy to provide any information like that to girls who are in my position, who are in the position I was, who are kind of unsure, who kind of want that help. Not sure how to draft an email to a coach, not sure, how to, like, how much strength they should be doing. Think questions just all across the spectrum, even including academic requirements. I'm happy, super happy to help with that because I wish, I want to be that person who I wish I had when I was younger. So that's sort of part of my mission. It's just to inspire people, help people get there, realize that they can do things that are seemingly difficult and impenetrable. I think is the biggest part of like why I continue to play, why I come on to podcasts like yours. So I know so many girls are going to be watching, so many coaches are going to be watching. I'm happy to be a resource to them. Absolutely. Instagram, shoot me a DM. Happy to help.
Brooke, this has been so awesome. And I'm sure you've inspired many, and you might be getting a lot of messages soon here. But everyone, please use Brooke as a resource and as a guide if you aspire to play at a high level or you just want to be healthy for life. I mean, she has like so many great general fitness content as well. So be sure to give her a follow and let us know what you thought of the episode. Please leave a comment if you're doing any of the performance things that Brooke has dialed in, and we would love to hear from you. We will see you on next week's episode. Brooke, thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me, Erica. Thanks everybody for listening.